Welcome to another episode of the Plutus Awards podcast. I'm your host, Chris Browning. Our community is filled with hundreds of stories from creators and entrepreneurs just like you. And through this podcast, we plan to share these stories from bloggers to podcasters, writers, speakers, and more. Today's guest is Caroline Vencil from carolinevencil.com, and she is killing it in the blog space right now and doing all of this while raising 4 kids. 5 if you count her husband, which I know many wives out there do. So that's why I am so excited to hop into our conversation. Caroline, thanks for joining me here today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we want everyone to know, we're going to give you a disclaimer right up front. We're going to be talking about balancing work and family, which you do extremely well. And you're actually doing it right now as we're speaking. You have a baby in hand.
Absolutely. And the other 3 kids on the couch about 10 feet away with the TV nanny on so that I can get a few minutes to do some awesome podcasting with the amazing Chris Browning.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm impressed by you because I don't have any kids and I already feel stressed out. So I'm very impressed by your ability to balance things with kids. So
thanks.
Yeah. So I want to let people know, you may hear some noise in the background, but hey, this is real life. You're working and you're a mom and you got to do both at the same time.
Exactly.
Well, I know I appreciate you taking time, even though you have your family there. I'm sure they want your attention. To me, it is always amazing seeing people who have the ability to take on the task of building and running their own business, but then also you're a mom, you have your kids there with you and trying to figure out how to do both at the same time. So, I mean, one, I just want to right off the bat, is it hard?
Oh, gosh. No, it's a cakewalk. It's great. I just sit at home eating bonbons all day. Of course, it is incredibly hard. And, sometimes you have these incredible plans for your work day and they all just go out the window because somebody has a stomach bug. It's like, well, there goes my work day and all work that I was going to do for basically at least the next 36 hours is gone because there's a stomach bug and there's nothing that I can do about it. And sometimes you have a webinar that you have to do with a kid next to you with a vomit bucket because that is real life and working at home. And sometimes you do what you have to do. And it's not always easy. It's definitely not glamorous. Can I tell you? Like, you can't see this obviously in the podcast, but I have spit up on both of my shoulders right now. I have my hair in a mom bun. Like, it is not glamorous at all. But, you get what you can done, and that's the important part.
Well, I admire you greatly because we met maybe about a year ago. Yeah. And I just heard your reputation preceded you. I heard great things about you before we ever met. And so it's an honor to have you on and get to talk to you about what you're doing because you're not just running a small business. You're running a 6-figure business at this point while also watching after your 4 kids.
Yep.
And probably your husband too. So
a little bit, yeah. So 5 kids, can we call that?
5 kids, 1 really large kid.
Yeah.
I know for you started your blog after we were kind of talking about, you started to help women manage their money. And because for a lot of women, especially moms who are staying at home, getting a job isn't always feasible because, childcare for one is not cheap.
No, it's not. Oh my goodness.
Especially with multiple kids. So I think it's a really great mission to help women find ways to, make some extra money and work while they're at home still.
Yeah, it was something that I was always kind of passionate about because my husband and I, back when we were really struggling with our finances and it was just his one income, and we only had 2 kids at the time, I started looking into obviously the answer is to get a second job. I kind of started crunching some numbers and it's like, it would make no sense to put our kids in daycare if I was working because literally the only thing that my income would do would be to pay for the daycare. And what's the point at that point? Like, no one's seeing each other. It's just a big scheduling disaster. Everyone's stressed. Everyone's tired. And I'm not making any extra money for the house. And so being able to do that from home is something that I always kind of thought was like for just, pyramid schemes or something. And then I actually started looking into it. It's like, no, people are actually doing this. And this is something that's real and feasible. And more people need to know that it's not all MLMs and pyramid schemes that are out there. And so that was kind of where it all kind of started of like, I have to tell somebody about this. So thus the blog, and it's turned into something completely more than that now too.
How did you even know how to, one, start this business up or start, blogging on your own, especially, with the family and all the things you had to do? Like, where was your start at in all of this?
So it's actually kind of a funny story. So right after the birth of my third son, he was like 6 weeks old or something. And I was stressed out, and it was probably a little bit of like postpartum depression, anxiety, whatever it was. I'm like, I am so lonely and isolated, because if you've never had kids, you don't understand like how lonely it is with a newborn. It's like people don't want a screaming, angry horde of children like descending like locusts upon their house. So it's really hard to go anywhere. It's hard to do anything. And so I was on Pinterest one day, probably while there was a child screaming in the background. And I'm on Pinterest and I saw someone's income report, and I wish that I remember whose it was, but it was something like how I made $20,000 last month from my blog. I sat there and I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is not, there's no way. And I started kind of thinking, I'm like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And I have a background in marketing. Like that was always kind of my passion is in marketing. And so I'm like, if any normal human can do this, so can I. And so I started my blog right then and there with my $2.95 a month from Bluehost or whatever the plan was. And I started it, and I made my first stupid hello world, like, let me introduce myself to you. And I thought that it was that easy to make money from a blog. And I sat there and I published it, and I just kept hitting refresh, like waiting for all of the traffic to descend upon my site. Like, I'm not joking. I actually thought that like I put a post out there and I just make $1 million. Like that's how it works, right? Apparently, go figure, it's actually not that easy.
Really?
And I learned, I know, go figure, right? I learned that out the hard way. And I'm sitting there like, I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I need to post more. And so then it turned into a really bad, unhealthy thing of like, I was spending like 50 hours a week on this blog that was making zero money at all. Because all I was doing is just trying to get more content out there and not actually focusing on like who I wanted to talk to, what I really wanted to write about. And then I kind of drilled down. It took about 6 months before I really kind of figured out like this is the money aspect, helping women figure out their finances, figure out how to save money, how to budget, and how to make money from home was kind of what I really wanted to talk about. And so once I figured that out, then it all started coming together. It was like a puzzle piece. Like I was doing a puzzle without the directions beforehand. And once I figured out who I wanted to talk to and who I wanted to help, it was like everything started coming together. And it has been a wild ride since then. But I did not think that I would be making, 6 figures working out of my basement or working from my kitchen table with 4 kids of all things. So that's kind of how it all started, was just like I saw a pin and I'm like, I can do that too. And the disclaimer should have been there, like, it doesn't happen overnight and it takes a lot of work and a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Oh, yeah, no, it's totally cake. Everyone can do it.
So once you started this, you said you're putting a lot of hours into this. You're putting a lot of time into this.
Oh, I did. Yeah. Not anymore. I learned my lesson.
Well, okay, I'm going to pin that right there because I want to come back to that.
Okay.
So how were you dividing up your hours? I know, you had your kids. I'm sure they wanted your attention, but then you also were trying to put work into your blog. So what was that balance, or was there no balance in the beginning?
So disclaimer, do not do what I am about to tell you. I woke up at about 4:30 every morning and I went to bed at about midnight every night. And mind you, I had a 6-week-old when I started my blog. And I was committed to figuring this all out. And I was doing all of the wrong things. So I'm working before my kids get up. And thankfully, all my kids sleep in. They love to sleep. They're really good at self-entertaining and everything like that. And no shame, Netflix nanny is a real thing. But I mean, I would get up at 4:30 and I would work until they would get up at about 8:30. And then at nap time, I would work. In between feedings for the brand new baby, I'm feeding a baby. I'm nursing a baby and I'm balancing my laptop next to the baby so that I can work while I'm nursing. Talk about burning the candle at both ends. Like, my husband was not too happy. I'm like, I have no time for you. I have no free time for anything. Like, he would come home from work and I'd be on the computer. He'd go to work and I'm on the computer. It was just really, really bad. It was a lot of time in the beginning doing dumb, piddly things. And I'm pretty sure during that period of time, I updated my About Me page like every other day. Whereas, like I said to you before we started recording, I'm like, I haven't updated my About Me page in probably a year and a half. And it probably desperately needs to be updated. But that's just one of those things that, like, in the beginning, you think that all of these little tiny things are so important. And in reality, it's really, really not.
What was something that you were doing that you no longer do that you consider like a waste of time?
Oh, gosh. This is kind of actually a good lesson, believe it or not, because I learned this the hard way and I don't want anybody else to have to spend their entire week doing this. I was listening to, back when I started, Periscope was a thing.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Okay, so Periscope was a thing. And every morning, Crystal Payne from Money Saving Mom, who I absolutely love, both as like a person and as a blogger, did a morning show like on Periscope. And one of the things that she said was that she posts on her Facebook page every hour. And so in my head, it's like, okay, she has, 950,000 likes on Facebook. If she's posting every hour, that must mean that in order to get a lot of likes, you have to post every hour. And so it's like, okay, so I'll post every hour. Well, the full disclosure of it takes a long time to find things to post on Facebook. And so let's go ahead and assume, it takes conservatively 5 minutes per post to find something to share on Facebook. And there's 24 of them. And so I'm spending all of this time making posts for a Facebook page that had 3 likes. And it was my mother-in-law, my husband, and myself that were liking my page. So, and of course, the day ends and it's like, wow, that was a lot of productive work. And I have to do it all over again tomorrow. That was my big thing, was what big bloggers were doing is not something that I need to be competing with. And I was trying to. And what you don't know when you're starting out, because you kind of have this, this is just, a normal mom in their living room, this is just kind of normal people. What you don't know is a lot of big bloggers have big teams. Exactly. Big bloggers have big teams to help them out with all of their stuff, with social media, with email, with posting their posts, with getting links and stuff, all of those things. So what Crystal may have forgotten to mention, or just didn't feel like, you don't need to say these things, is she has a team that schedules all of these things, whose full-time job it is to schedule these things. Whereas I'm trying to, spread myself so thin, doing all of the things with Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest, and getting my pins to look good, and getting my profile to look good, and getting my site to look good, and designing a logo. All big bloggers have people who do those things for them. They're not spending a lot of time to do those things themselves. They're focusing on the tasks that they can't outsource. So in the beginning, I didn't know about outsourcing as a real thing for bloggers. Because again, it to me was anybody can do this. Okay.
For you then, now that you were working your way through some of the mistakes, some of the things you realized that you didn't need to do, how did you organize your day? How was your day structured to be able to still look after your children, but then also work?
In the beginning or now? Because I can tell you the laundry list of the mistakes that I've made over the course of time with balancing my kids and work. But
let's jump up to today now, the present time. What have you learned, I guess, and what have you implemented now to help you find that balance?
I think that the most important thing is to really dig into what is most important each day. Because, you can do a lot of busy work, but it doesn't really actually mean that you're being productive. Busy does not equal productive. And that really kind of spoke to me. When I first saw that, I think it was on one of those kitschy wall plaques.
Oh, yeah.
It was busy is not productive. I'm that is exactly right. That was something that I, in the very beginning, was getting so confused. I was working, quote unquote, a lot, but in reality, nothing was being super productive. I wasn't actually accomplishing anything. If you look back on the days that I was doing, it's cool, one person liked something on Facebook. You got one person to click an Amazon affiliate link. You made a post. Those are great, but what have you actually done that's of substance, like that's going to actually be making money? And that was the key aspect in the beginning that I was missing, because everything that I was doing was busy work. It wasn't actually growing my blog. It wasn't actually making me any money either. And ultimately, you know, if you're spending 50, 60 hours a week on your blog, you better be making money from it. Like otherwise, you know, you're going to be really, really burned out really, really quickly.
Especially when your time is limited. So I mean, you couldn't just be on your computer constantly with multiple kids around.
Yeah, and it's really stressful. And the mom guilt. Can I just speak about mom guilt, everybody? Sorry, Chris, but mom guilt is a totally real thing, and it's one of those things where it's like my kids found one of my old laptops, and they were like, "Look, I'm mommy," and they started typing on it. I'm like, "Oh, I don't know if this is a good thing or if I should be worried about this." And yes, there are times where you feel like you are the worst mother in the world because you are trying to build this blog and this business, and you can't do everything. And that's something you really have to give yourself grace about. If I can share literally my biggest mom guilt moment of all time. Last year, my oldest son was doing baseball practice, and I had to bring my laptop in the car. I have my hotspot turned on, and I'm writing a post. And next thing I know, one of the baseball moms is knocking on my window of my car. And I look out, and my kid is in the middle of the baseball field lying down because he had gotten hit in the face with a pop fly.
Oh, man.
And I did not see it because I was working on my computer at baseball practice in the car. So it's a real kind of dual-edged sword here with the mom guilt, like where you want to be around your kids constantly, but at the same time, blogging and working really, really feeds my soul in a way that I absolutely love. And in order for me to be a good mom to my kids and a good wife and like a good person, I need to have that part of me being nurtured. Woo. Real life here. My baby is grunting into the microphone.
She wants to get on too.
I know. She's just like, you need to hear me too.
Well, Caroline, I wanted to ask you this one last question here. So for people out there, who I'm sure there's tons of people listening who have kids and who are trying to find any type of tips or advice on how to balance family and the work they're trying to do. What's one tip or one piece of advice that you could give to someone who's struggling to find that balance?
Oh gosh. One tip. You really have to figure out what is your goal and what you want to do with your blog. Because if you just want to, write about your feelings on your kids and, life as kind of like a day-to-day thing, that's one thing. But if you want to make a business out of this, you really have to figure out what you can say yes to versus what you need to be saying no to. You can say yes to spending your time working with new sponsors, to get sponsored posts, to finding out how to make gift guides, to finding out how to use more affiliate links, to do email marketing, all of those things that are super important as far as being able to make money from your blog. But at the same time, you have to be able to know what to say no to. So it's okay to say no to posting on Facebook every hour of every single day just because you see that that's what bigger bloggers are doing. It's okay to say no to sending out a 1,500-word email every single day just because you see that that's what bigger bloggers are doing. It's okay to do all of those things and to kind of just keep your focus on what you are doing. Because honestly, there's so much comparison that you can make out there. But just try super, super hard to focus on what you are doing and really, really stick to what you want out of your blog. If you can figure out a goal that can really push you forward, even when, your kids are screaming and pulling your hair and have had a stomach bug for the past 2 days, if you can find a goal that will keep you moving forward through all of that, then you will be able to find a way to make blogging work while having a family. Does that make sense?
That's such great advice. I think even if you don't have kids, I think that's great advice because I think so often we see what other people are doing and we want to do it because we want to be successful. And that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to work for you. And maybe that shouldn't even be your focus. So that's a great tip. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate
Oh,
that.
good. I'm glad. It's so true, though, because I mean, if you compare yourself, the comparison game will just absolutely kill you. I mean, even if you're talking about podcasting, like you could look at Dave Ramsey, like if you measure yourself by like Dave Ramsey has a full studio.
Exactly.
So I have to have that. It's like you can't measure yourself by someone else's yardstick.
Exactly. Caroline, thank you so much for taking some time out and talking with me, even though you're still on duty. You have no off time. You're still
Oh,
on
yeah.
duty. So, but before we get out of here, I just want to give people an opportunity to reach out to you. So if there's people who have questions or they want to kind of see more of what you're doing and how you're kind of implementing everything, what's the best way to get in contact with you or to just send a message your way?
Absolutely. You can find me on carolinevencil.com or you can get to my Instagram. I'm really good at responding to DMs on Instagram for some reason, which is at Caroline Vencil.
Okay, perfect. We'll put all that in the show notes. That way people can easily go find you if they're in their car right now. I don't want them hitting somebody because they're trying to write it down. We'll make it easy for you. So, but no, thank you, Caroline. I really appreciate your time. And hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. I think it's Sunday today, right?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. And thank you, everybody, for putting up with my kids in the background. Like real life here.
I appreciate all of you joining us here for another episode. And next week, I am joined by Bethany Bayless, 2-time host and Plutus Award nominee. And we're going to be talking about burnout. I think a topic that all of us have experienced at some point in time in our careers. So make sure you are subscribed so that way you get that episode and more from the Plutus Awards podcast. You can learn more about our guests and the Plutus Awards podcast at plutusawards.com/podcast and on Instagram at Plutus Awards. Again, thanks so much for joining us, and remember to keep creating. Would you mind having them turn it down just a little bit more?
Sure. Hang on. Volume down. Down. Woo. Down, down, down. We lost the remote control. This is a good way to start this.